Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with a very special episode of Hunter World Iceborne. Today, we are doing a podcast with Dark Hero, and we're going to be talking about a lot of topics in regards to Hunter World Iceborne. I haven't really had a chance to just sit down and do like a spoiler-free video, because you guys know that usually when a new game comes out, I try to do some kind of spoiler-free content for the people that either don't have enough money to get into it yet, are still on the fence, and they don't want to get spoiled, and so that is what we are doing here today. Below my webcam, that is Dark Hero. Dark Hero, say hi.
Hey everybody, welcome to our podcast discussing Iceborne. You guys feel free to let us know what you're thinking about it. Make sure you like the live stream, of course. And we're gonna have you guys joining us in a moment, but at first, since we want to keep it a spoiler-free discussion, we will be keeping the session closed so as to not show any armor sets or weapons that could be considered spoilers for people that have yet to play the expansion.
Pretty much. That's why I had to change all of my Palico gear around, all of my own characters' gear around, to make sure that nothing really is that revealing. All we really have is a beautiful view from Hoarfrost Reach, which really is beautiful. This is in the new Gathering Hub, by the way, which is a fantastic spot. The Moss Hunter team's still doing fantastic work when it comes to like locations and animations and just stuff that you can just good spaces to hang out and to hunt and to do all kinds of crazy stuff. Now, for the people that are coming onto the live stream or that are watching the VOD, one of the things that I would advise you is don't really look at chat if you're worried about spoilers, because, you know, we have been live streaming the game for quite some time, so we have seen a lot of the game already. So people in chat might start debating stuff about spoilers, so I would advise you guys to not look at that if you're concerned with that kind of stuff. So, having said that, I think the first thing that we should talk about is the overall impressions of the expansion. A lot of people, I guess because they don't know the type of team that is the Monster Hunter team, were worried about whether or not this expansion was going to be worth the $40 asking price. Dark Hero, what is your opinion on this?
Since the very start, I was not really sure about where they were coming from. I guess maybe they didn't play through any of the previous Monster Hunter games, but even so, the Monster Hunter team has always been known for giving its players exactly what they wanted and go above and beyond the Call of Duty and provide them with a lasting experience that they are sure for many years to come. At least that's how I've always felt. And this time around with Iceborne, I think they have nailed it in pretty much every single aspect, except for one minor thing, which we'll talk about more in this discussion. But other than that, I think that we have more than enough content to keep us playing for hundreds, if not thousands of hours. The endgame is strong. The story is strong. Everything about it is incredible. And yeah, I just think that $40 for this expansion, it might as well cost 100, and I would gladly pay up because it's going to keep me playing for a very long time.
Yeah, it actually is something that, in my opinion, you just brushed up on Endgame there. We're going to be going into greater detail about that, but naturally not in the spoiler-free section of the podcast. But even the Endgame itself is going to expand, from what I can tell at least, for a lot more hours than the Endgame of the of Monster Hunter World base game. Because like, I kind of felt like we reached the Endgame of Monster Hunter World, and you're immediately put into a position where you're just like, okay, I'm farming my decorations, I'm doing all the things, and now I can augment my weapons and all of that stuff. And the systems were kind of like simple, right? This time around, I feel like it is much more complex, like to the point I don't have a single weapon that I would consider to be properly endgame optimized, despite the fact that I probably am about to reach like 100 hours or maybe even a little bit more into Iceborne, which is great. Well, maybe not 100 hours, maybe like 50. But it's kind of crazy to me that all these hours have kind of gone by and I'm like, I still don't have like a proper endgame weapon? It's kind of insane.
Yeah, definitely. We are about 50 hours into the expansion, and there is so much stuff left for us in the end game. It's not an endless grind like it was in the base game. There is a purpose to what you're doing. There's a lot of things that you can chase after. It's not up to RNG in all the time. There's agency, and that is something that is very important, something that players were very vocal about in regards to the base game, and it's great to see that the Monster Hunter team has been listening to the player base.
And not only that, but we also have the whole thing with. Damn it! I kind of lost my train of thought all of a sudden. I was thinking about something and it just kind of ran away. But something that you said had triggered a memory in me, and it's gone now. Guys, sleep deprivation is completely real right now. It's just setting in. It's just everything's going to hell. But yeah, there's a lot of grind for you guys to do. There's a lot of optimization for you guys to do in terms of gear. Oh, and I know what I wanted to say. And even 50 hours in, here's the interesting thing. Even 50 hours in, me and Dark Hero haven't seen all of the monsters yet.
Yep.
We haven't seen all. We are at endgame, but we haven't unlocked all of the monsters yet. So that even after you finish the main story, you haven't seen all of the monsters. There's 2 monsters that we've seen after the main story, but there's even still more monsters that we haven't seen, which is it's just, again, not only you're working towards your weapon, you're actually unlocking new content as well while you are doing it, which is really friggin' sweet. Now, one of the things that I wanted to touch up on is, like, I think overall both of our impressions of Iceborne are pretty positive. Like, I also think the game is most definitely worth the asking price because there's just so much content. Because I think that people don't really realize that when you're talking about bringing the old monsters up to master rank, together with all of the new monsters, which we were counting earlier, and we think it's about 27 new monsters, probably more, but about 27 new monsters, plus all of the old roster coming back, being updated for for master rank. Like, that's a ridiculous amount of monsters and a lot of content for you to do. Some of them have new moves. Some of them have, most of them have new gear because you get all new master rank gear for just about everything. And there's just a ton of variety and a ton of things that you can build around for your character. The grind is incredibly satisfying and still incredibly addicting. I mean, I spent 1,300 hours in World, and I think I'm probably going to be spending 1,300 more in Iceborne, which is insane. And we have a new monster already coming on the 10th of October, which is just completely crazy.
Yeah, definitely a lot of content to go through. But without any further ado, let's talk about our general thoughts about the expansion, go a bit more into detail about some aspects while still remaining spoiler-free at the beginning. So I think we should start by talking about some of the weapon changes, because I think that changes everything you do in the game a lot. Even if you're still fighting against the monsters that you have been fighting since the release of the base game, now it's going to feel totally different, because these weapon changes allow you to use completely different playstyles. Some of these changes can be small in some instances, but if you look at the longsword, the gun lance, or the hunting horn, these 3 weapons, in my opinion, have received some huge additions that make them a lot more appealing to use, a lot more fun as well, and a lot more viable.
I can tell you right now that the gun lance in particular, like, I don't think I've ever been this addicted to a weapon in Monster Hunter, because I remember I started Monster Hunter World and I mained the gun lance and I crafted a bunch of gun lances, tried different playstyles, all that stuff, and very quickly kind of swapped into charge blades and then into sword and shields, because I was just like, oh, let's try out this thing, that thing. And now with the gun lance, just the addition of the Wyvern Stake Blast, it's just so much fun to try and figure out the type of stuff that you can do to it. Like, at some points, whenever I knock down a monster, I'm literally thinking, can I do 2 full bursts and then go into a Wyvern's Fire? Can I do 1 full burst, go into a Wyvern's Fire? Can I delay my Wyvern's Fire a couple of seconds so that I can trigger a stagger when the monster gets up? Just like the amount of strategy that you get to do now with these new additions, it's amazing. And then on top of it, you also get the Clutch Claw, which I've said before Iceborne released that it is my favorite weapon. And it's just insane, the ridiculous stuff that you can do with the Clutch Claw. One of the things I wasn't even aware until we began actually playing the game, and I was like, oh, I'm going to try doing this. You can ram a monster into another monster. Like, I knew about ramming into walls. I did not think that you could I'm just going to ram this monster into another monster. Both of them take massive amounts of damage. Both of them fall down, giving you great openings. And you can just have these really magical moments. Like I had one yesterday. I can't tell you the name of one of the monsters that was in that fight, but I rammed this monster into a Tobi Kadachi. Tobi Kadachi was like midway through his little flip jump, and I ram another monster right into it. Bam! Caught him mid-air. Beautiful moment, magical moment. I'm never going to forget it. Must have been the most badass thing I've ever done in Monster Hunter. Friggin' fantastic.
Yeah, the Clutch Claw adds a whole nother dimension to combat in Monster Hunter, something that we have never seen before, really. And it allows you to do a specific attack that is unique to each of the weapons, and that also has unique properties. So what is considered a light weapon will cause a monster to drop slinger ammo after you do the special Clutch Claw attack. But if you're using what is considered a heavy weapon, you will tenderize a monster part, and that will allow you to deal more damage against that monster part. So it adds another dimension where you can choose to do, you can choose what you want to do. Do you want to prioritize breaking a monster part or inflicting more damage to a weak spot so you can get on with the quest faster? Or perhaps you want to get more slinger ammo because your weapon takes advantage of it. And not only that, but being able to grapple onto monsters, especially flying monsters that sometimes are difficult to deal with because they stay up in the air for a long time, and you can ram them against walls. You can basically skip moments in the fight where maybe with a great sword or another melee weapon that is a bit slow, you would have had a hard time dealing with because you aren't unable to reach those monsters. So the entire toolkit for the player is expanded massively, and it's just fantastic. And like Rurikhan was saying, it creates these very memorable moments that you are not going to forget for a very long time, and you won't be able to replicate in many other games.
That's for damn sure. Dude, just like slam it. It's addicting as hell to clutch onto a monster, slam it into a wall, clutch onto a monster, slam it into another monster, clutch onto a monster to steal stuff. Like, there was that one time I was in your stream, and I remember there was me, you, and there was Tresh and Reyna, and I looked away for a second because I needed to pick up some ammo because Gunlance is tremendously dependent on ammunition now. And I pick up ammunition, and I turn around to the monster again, and these three guys just all clutching onto it, beating the monster in the head. And I was like, what is wrong with you people? There's like three of you clutching onto him at the same time. It was so insane. So yeah, the Clutch Claw is amazing. It's a lot of fun. The new additions to the moveset of the weapons is a lot of fun. I haven't gotten to test all of them. As you guys know, I've started focusing on the Gunlance. I'm now transitioning into focusing on the Charge Blade as well, because that is what you guys want to see. And the Charge Blade, I can tell you right now, Savage Axe Slash brings in a whole new dimension of play, particularly for Elemental Charge Blades, which is what I'm going to be focusing on first, because I actually tested it out in the training room, comparing, for instance, just unloading super amped elemental discharges versus using the Savage Axe Slash, and it's not something that's as linear as like, oh, this thing is better than the other thing, because like in the same amount of time, I was able to deal more damage with the Savage Axe Slash for sure. But the problem is, Savage Axe Slash, you're not as mobile because you're going to be in axe mode. You are much more vulnerable to monster attacks, and therefore, you're going to need to use something like that when the monster is down. Whereas Super Amped Elemental Discharge, you're much more defensible. You can actually block. You can do all of these different things and then load into the Super Amped Elemental Discharge. So it's not as black and white as just like this mode deals more damage than that mode. It's more like, in this situation, this thing will excel. In that situation, this other thing will excel. Kind of like the same thing with the Gunlance for me. For instance, I was stuck in this mindset early into the game where it's like, I gotta do full burst. I gotta do full burst. I gotta do full burst. I almost forgot the Gunlance also has pokes. You can poke fast enemies. You don't have to do slam burst the whole. So I was just like, no, I gotta beat him upside the head with the slam burst. And it's like, no, there's more to the movesets, and all of these new things that you can do with them is just fantastic. It's not really, I think, what a lot of people were asking for early on. I mean, there's definitely a lot of new things to learn with the weapons, but I think a lot of people were asking for Hunter arts from GU. Like, I know that I was like, man, dude, Valor Gunlance all the way. But I kind of feel like it might have been a little bit too soon because Monster Hunter World brought in a lot of new people, right? And if with the Iceborne expansion, all of a sudden you're just like, here's Hunter arts and Hunter styles. Your Hunter now has 6 different styles. People will be like, what? What's going on? So it's not as complex as GU just yet, but it does add quite a few layers of complexity with the new moves that I find them to be very satisfying to use with the monsters for sure. I also experimented during the beta with Sword and Shield Perfect Rush, and I can also tell you that in the final version, Perfect Rush is, at least it feels to me, a lot more forgivable than it was in the beta. So the button prompts, you don't have to get them like on a frame perfect mode. You have a little bit more of a window for those moves, which is good. And most of the weapons have kind of like received that level of polish all around.
Yeah, I have been playing around with a few weapons. I have also yet to try it all of them, but the ones that I've given a try, which were the Hunting Horn, the Charge Blade, the Longsword, Lance, and the Sword and Shield and the Dual Blades, I also gave that a try recently. I think all of them, again, they are a huge addition to the moveset of the weapon, and you can choose not to use these new moves as well. They are not going to be overwhelming because what you did before still works now and can be even better in the cases of some weapons that got some much deserved buffs. And Rurikhan was now talking about the new attack that the Sword and Shield has received. That move, for example, is something I tried out in the beta and I couldn't pull it off, at least not while on a hunt. I could do it in a training area, but as someone who doesn't use the Sword and Shield a lot, it was a bit too difficult for me.
You just gotta get good.
Yeah, I just gotta get good. But now, I don't have to worry too much about that, because they have certainly made the attack more forgiving, or the timing of the attack more forgiving, and it remains as an ability that requires you to pay attention to what you're doing. It has specific timings to get the best out of it, so it is a skill-based move, but it is still accessible to a lot of new players that want to give a shot to these new techniques and abilities, and it's something that the Monster Hunter team always takes into consideration, and we should always appreciate. And my favorite, since we're talking about these weapon changes, I guess I should mention that my favorite is the Hunting Horn, without a doubt, because the weapon in itself is already my favorite weapon. I am very biased when it comes to this, without a doubt, without a question. But given the new changes, you can now spin the Hunting Horn around, and it deals massive amounts of KO damage. You now have access to the Impact Echo Wave nodes, which is just ridiculous to say the least. You basically play the melody of the Hunting Horn, and you deal a massive area of effect damage that can deal a lot of damage, knock out the monster, and you can easily stack up those melodies and start and get ready to create an encore of that move, which can deal upwards of 1,000 damage. That is unbelievable. No one would say that the Hunting Horn was capable of doing such a thing in the base game. So that is just an example of how much things can change in the Iceborne expansion.
It's like, I find it interesting that the Hunting Horn is still the least played weapon. Like, I love what they've done with it. Like, on the beta, I played it a little bit. And the spinning move, like, I think a lot of people don't understand just how satisfying it is to fully land that spinning move into a monster. Just hearing those concussive hits on his face, like, like non-stop. It's beautiful. But anyway, weapons aside, it's like the weapons receive it's going to take you a while to kind of remaster your weapon, I feel like, with all of the new stuff that everything has gotten. One of the things that I also wanted to talk about is the amount of reveals that Capcom has done for Iceborne, because I feel like they have somewhat negatively impacted my personal experience, and this is just like a bit of feedback all around, which is, it's like Capcom started with a trailer that revealed 3 monsters, and in this first part, we're not going to mention any other monster besides those ones in the very first trailer, right? The 3 new monsters that were coming to Iceborne. And to me, it's like, that would have been enough. I don't want to know about any other monster that is coming, but I'm an extreme case. So like, sure, tell us about the other monsters that are coming and whatnot. But like, they revealed 18 monsters until the game came out. That's 18 monsters out of the 27 that we counted today. That's a lot. I would say that was way too much. That not only they revealed too much with the trailers, but I also felt that they revealed too much with the beta, allowing us to fight the flagship monster in the beta, which is something that they also did in Monster Hunter World. They allowed us to fight Nergigante in Monster Hunter World. And even then, like when they did it in World, I remember thinking like, I don't want to fight Nergigante before the game comes out. Like that doesn't make any sense. Because at the time I even thought he was going to be like the last boss. I was like, what the crap? So that was definitely something that I felt impacted the experience because there were a lot less surprises. Like I got into into a lot of hunts where the commander or whatever it is that gives you the quest, he goes like, oh, you're going to be fighting this monster. And I was like, well, I saw that monster in the trailers. I know what his biggest strength is. So I would just go to my build and I would add 3 decorations to resist his biggest strength. And I went into the fight and it was the easiest thing ever. I beat his face up and down the friggin' map like he barely even touched me, right? Just like completely destroyed this monster. Then I go into another fight later down the line. Again, same situation. It's like, oh, you're going to be fighting this monster now. And I'm like, I remember him in the trailers. His strength is this thing. So I put in the resistances of that in my set. Go in, beat the crap out of the monster. Up and down the map. No problem whatsoever. Bam. And we're talking, in this second case, we're talking about an Elder Dragon. Okay, an Elder Dragon. I'm just going to put these 3 decorations in here. Bam. Got in there. I even used some of the moves because of the stuff that they had shown. And I really felt like they showed too much. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree 100%. That's something that I have mentioned in a couple of videos as well. They didn't reveal as much stuff as they did with the base game, where in a roster of 30 monsters at launch, they revealed 28. But that was just ridiculous. Here, they didn't reveal as much, but I still agree with you. I think that they revealed too much, for sure. I didn't like the fact that whenever I was told by an NPC that I was going to fight a specific monster, I already knew what it was, so I could adjust for the fight beforehand. I could take antidotes to fight a monster that I knew was going to poison me. I could take fire resistance to fight a monster that I knew was going to burn me. And that is something that I think is part of the Monster Hunter experience, to adapt to the situation, to deal with these quests that aren't expected. That is why we had urgent quests before. These situations always made it so that the players have to adapt to the situation, have to overcome these challenges. And when you look at the trailer that shows you the iconic moves that the monster has, that shows you the element a monster uses or the ailment a monster uses, you can plan accordingly, and the fight is going to be 50% easier just based on that knowledge. And in regards to fighting the monsters in the beta, I also agree with you, but I do understand what a lot of people will be saying, that is that they have done this for a long while. They have had multiple demos in the past with various games. Generation Ultimate comes to mind, where you are able to fight against the flagship monster of the title. I have never been a fan of that personally. I agree with you 100% on it. But yeah, it is something that they have been doing, and I guess it makes sense from a marketing standpoint, especially because a lot of people were saying that many of the monsters that we were going to be getting in Iceborne, especially the ones that were revealed at the beginning, were reskins, because I don't want to get too much into that to avoid spoilers, but that was never true to begin with. But that is something that Capcom and the Monster Hunter team has to deal with, and they want to reach more sales, so they just start revealing more stuff because it gets people more hype. And yeah, in the end, it does end up ruining a bit of the experience. I still love the game, it's a 10 out of 10 for me, but I would have liked to go in blind with a lot of stuff that was revealed.
And I think it's especially true for something like Monster Hunter World, because they do such a good job. Like, whereas in other Monster Hunters, you never really had something like a proper hunter's guide like you have here, where you can just go in, look up the weaknesses of monsters after you fought them a couple of times. So it would have been great to have more use of that, as opposed to already knowing, oh, I know what this monster's going to do, know what that monster's going to do, know what that like, we knew most of the monsters already going in, and I really, really wish that wasn't the case. But, you know, it is what it is. This was more just a little bit of feedback that we at least felt that too much was revealed. And I know that a lot of people don't have that big of an issue with it, but I guess even being in a minority, it's just like, I don't know. I'm just that old guy that's like, back in my day, you didn't get to see everything before the game came out. You experienced it in due time. And I kind of just feel like that was way cooler. There were still some cool surprises, though, don't get me wrong. You'll still find some interesting surprises throughout the story that we will talk about in the second part of this podcast. But, you know, so like I said, for people that are wondering, we counted them earlier today, and between the new and some of the returning monsters from older games, you should be getting about 27 new hunts, maybe even 28. Again, not 100% sure because we haven't unlocked everything just yet. So what did you think about the new area, the Hoarfrost Reach? I mean, everybody knows that's what the new area is.
Yeah, we are getting a new area in the Iceborne expansion. That is, of course, a snow area. That is the Hoarfrost Reach. They did say it was the largest area that we have in Monster Hunter World, and the great thing about it is, while yes, it is a very expensive area, it's not as convoluted as the Ancient Forest. Still to this day, I sometimes get annoyed by some of the routes in the Ancient Forest.
That's why I have scout flies.
Yeah, I know, you have scout flies for that, but sometimes it's just annoying that you have to go on all of those vines. There is too much verticality in my opinion.
I love the verticality. I completely disagree with what you're...
Fine.
I really like the intricacies of Ancient Forest personally, but Hoarfrost Reach is also like a very beautiful area. I really like the snow. Like, I'm still surprised at how they were able to get the snow to work like that without making a PS4 explode. Like, it just blows me away because, like, the amount... Like, you can literally sit down, draw snow angels, or draw a dick, which is what most people decided to do naturally, just like a big dick and balls in the snow. It's just what tends to happen when you give people that amount of freedom. But it's just really nice, the amount of snow, the sound of the snow. You can tell that they really spent a lot of time just in the sound design of this game, as with many of the previous ones naturally, but the sound design of just like getting the sound right for when your character steps on snow. Because, like, I think that people that have never been to a place that has snow, they don't know the sound that it makes, but it's a very specific sound, and I feel like they really nailed it with Iceborne.
Yeah, the Hoarfrost Reach is beautifully designed. All of its intricacies, even some of the more secret areas that you can only reach by exploring it, it is the perfect area in my opinion. By far my favorite location in all of Monster Hunter World, and maybe all of the Monster Hunter series. There's something special about it.
And there's also, I've been told by several people, there's a bunch of Easter eggs in there with references to older Monster Hunter games that I personally haven't seen, but I've heard of one very specific one that I'm very curious to check out. But again, that would be pretty much in the spoiler territory, so we're not going to go there. Another new feature that we got in Monster Hunter World Iceborne is the Raider Riders. What do you think about the Raider Riders, considering that you went through like half of the story without actually getting them?
Yeah, I think they are a great addition. It's one of those small little details that you can do well without it. We didn't have access to it for the base game and we never missed it. But now that we have it, it's going to be difficult to imagine going back and playing the game without them. They are this very comfortable tool that allows you to get from one location to the next, to follow a monster while still being able to sharpen your weapon, to drink a mega potion or a hot drink. And it's just a cool little detail to be able to ride one of the small monsters that is roaming around the area, like a small Jaguars or a Gyros. It's a fantastic addition, really.
and it's just like such a massive quality of life to be able to like, oh, I'm just gonna summon my Uber over here, and then I'm gonna have him take me over to the monster, and while he's doing that, I'm gonna be healing myself up back to full, sharpening my weapon, eating food for stamina if I have to. You do all of these things while you're riding on the monster, and you can still pick up slinger ammo if he goes near enough to some. You can still pick up like resources and stuff. It really is pretty much game changing in terms of kind of like streamlining your hunts. Now I know that a lot of veteran hunters, they're gonna come in here and it's like, back in my day, you couldn't change weapons in the middle of a hunt, and it's like, yeah, did you prefer it that way? I like the quality of life stuff. I'm not gonna lie. I don't mind the way that the old Monster Hunter was. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that having all of these new features to me is a net positive as far
absolutely,
as far as I'm concerned. And one of the things that I really liked about them is how they change depending on the map that you're at. I think that's really cool because it's not always kind of like the same thing. Like when you're going to the Elder's Recess and certainly there's a Gastodon there and you ride a Gastodon into battle because the Gastodon is a cool looking monster. They were actually the only critters that were able to kill me in the original Monster Hunter World because they just kind of like they just formed up a line and there was like 4 Gastodons and they started attacking me nonstop. I'd be getting up, they would attack me. I would delay the get up, they would wait too, and then they would attack me when I was up, and they just put me into a corner and rammed me to death. And I was impressed. The Gastodon, they're very, very brave creatures, clearly. And now I think it's time to get into potentially there's two major criticisms that I have for Monster Hunter World, and I can't show you guys the examples, but we will show you some examples in the spoiler portion of the podcast. But the very first one, which is the biggest complaint that you probably have heard from most Monster Hunter players, including veterans, even such as Gaijin Hunters, Gaijin Hunter is a guy that doesn't complain about anything, okay? You rarely will see Gaijin Hunter complain about anything, and even he was just like, nah, man, this is messed up. And that is weapon designs. The weapon designs, I mean, because here's the thing. There are some weapons that are really, really cool. Really, really cool. Some of the weapons in the game are really, really well done, beautifully crafted, like works of art, straight up. And then there's these other weapons that got this bone treatment that look like the most generic piece of trash you've ever seen in your life. Like we got the dual blades from a certain monster that look like chicken drumsticks that you buy from KFC, except instead of having a KFC wrapper, they have a little bit of monster skin around them to make it look like they're from that monster, but they're just like bone drumsticks. They look terrible, abysmal. I have no idea how this was possible because here's the thing. There's a lot of people that are like saying, people that have only started Monster Hunter World, and I'm not trying to say that that's a bad thing. I'm happy that so many people started when Monster Hunter World came out, but there's a lot of people that came from Monster Hunter World and they see the weapon design is like, it's not that bad. That's because they've never seen what these weapons look like in previous games, right? And there's a lot of really iconic weapons that have gotten a really crappy treatment from the weapon design standpoint in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. This was also the case in Monster Hunter World, mind you, particularly with the hunting horn tree. The hunting horns kind of just looked like the same hunting horn with slightly different bits of skin attached to it. And Iceborne has seen a lot more of that across a lot more weapons, which is why if you guys eventually go and watch some of the live streams that I've been hosted, I did weapon and armor set reviews, and it's ridiculous. Some of the weapons are just terrible looking.
Yeah, it's just the case that we did receive a lot of bad weapon designs in the base game of Monster Hunter World. No doubt they have some excellent ones. You look at the Kushaladora weapons, for example, or the Deviljho ones, they look fantastic. But some other weapons, it's just a piece of bone or iron or steel with some feathers on top. And okay, that was something that was never appreciated in the base game. People complained about it. We were very vocal about it. And that's it. We were hoping that this problem would be fixed in the Iceborne expansion, which is what makes this even more absurd. We have been complaining about this pretty much since the release of the game, And now comes the Iceborne expansion a year and a half later or so, and we are dealing with the same problem. And in this case, I think that in some instances it's even worse, because we're talking about monsters that were in some of the previous games that had designs that have been with the franchise for a very long time. I'm talking about 10 years and more. And these designs are very dear and near to many fans of the franchise.
Yeah.
They are already done. They didn't have to design those weapons again. They just have to remodel them for World's engine, which still takes a lot of time and effort and work. We get that. But when we're talking about something that is 50% done, you already have the designs, and you're going to let a lot of people upset by just not giving them what they wanted and has been there since the beginning. I mean, it's just a bad case all around. Like you said, we have all kinds of members of the community complaining about this, even as far as Arax and Gaijin Hunter complaining about this, and they never complain about anything.
Yeah. And you're talking about weapons, for instance, that I've crafted back in Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. And looked amazing back then. Like, I remember, I was like, dude, this weapon looks amazing! And then I got here, and the same monster is back, and I'm like super pumped, and I craft this weapon, and I'm looking at it, and all I want to do is vomit. And then there's the system, right? Which we can talk just a little bit about, not going to go too in-depth with it, but there's a system, which is like this custom upgrade system for your weapons, which I can't even begin to understand what the idea was behind it. Like, you can power up your weapon slightly using this system. This is on top of augment. So you have the augment system, and then you have this other system, which is the custom system. And this is not available to all weapons, but it is available to all of these weapons that got the crappy designs. And so you might think, oh, that's why they got the crappier designs, because you got this custom system that's going to, change the way that they look. But they just kind of rotate through skins of other monsters, which stops even making sense. Like, when you get to the point that I have a blast gun lance that looks like a Legiana gun lance, you're just like, how does that even make sense? The custom weapon system is really, really weird, and it rotates through them, and the more you do, the more powerful it becomes. I haven't finished that system yet. I'm trying to, but it requires a lot of materials, but it is insanity, Now, the other thing... Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to add that we still have some amazing designs. Don't get that twisted. There are still some amazing designs. Some of these designs have completely blown me away. And me and Rurikhan have been playing Monster Hunter for a very long time. We have seen many of these weapon designs, and we are still able to be blown away by some of the new ones. That is very impressive. But it's just that they fail to keep some authentic designs that people have loved for a long time, that makes everyone upset in the community, or at least a large portion of the community.
And finally, this next one is going to be very specific towards Gunlance users, because as you guys know, I've been maining the Gunlance, and the Gunlance, for some strange reason, is the only weapon that has this problem. Like, I really, really don't understand the reasoning behind this. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever to me. And that is the wide shelling. Now, if you guys remember, back in Monster Hunter World, we had one normal shelling level 4 Gunlance, which was the Royal Burst. You had one long shell level 4 Gunlance, which was Zora's. And you never had a wide shelling level 4 Gunlance in the craftable weapon tree. Well, in comes Monster Hunter World Iceborne, and you have the exact same problem. There is no wide shelling level 6 Gunlance. I'm missing, there's one tree of upgrades that I haven't unlocked yet from like this secret monster that I haven't seen yet, but I've been told by people already that one is not a wide shelling Gunlance. Again, I haven't verified for myself, but even if that one monster has the one wide shelling level 6 Gunlance, it's still terrible design, because ultimately I've been playing for over 50 hours at this point. And basically, once I got to the end game, I wasn't able to do the wide shelling playstyle with a wide shelling Gunlance. The biggest problem with this is the fact that, like, You got these wide shelling level 5 gun lances. You have no reason to use them. All of them that are in the tree, if you actually want to use wide shelling, you have no reason to use them at all because long shelling level 6 is going to be better 100% of the time. I'm not talking about 60% of the cases or 70% of the cases. I'm saying 100% of cases, a long shelling level 6 gun lance will outperform a wide shelling level 5 gun lance whenever it comes down to shelling. Whether that's with Wyvern's Fire, whether that's with regular shells, whether that's with charged shells, the long shelling gun lance will outperform it every day of the week because it's one level above. And there is no wide shelling level 6. And that to me is a major problem. It's a major oversight because it almost makes it seem like, oh, the wide shelling level 6 is just so powerful. It's the most powerful thing ever. We can't even put it in the game. And that's clearly not the case because the longsword is still the most used weapon. It's probably still the most powerful weapon. It's somewhere between the longsword, the bow guns, the charge blade. I don't even care about the meta that much. I'm just saying, like, if the reasoning is wide shelling level 6 is just this amazing powerhouse, it's not. It's really not. We already know that it's not. So it just doesn't make sense to me that there is no wide shelling level 6. And it feels a little bit broken for gunlance users that you look at your tree and you immediately discount like half of the gunlances that are there because they end at wide shelling level 5. You're just like, well, never going to craft any of these because they suck. It's a really weird thing. Whereas most weapons, they're somewhat viable. They might not be the most meta, but they're at least viable. And it's just like wide shelling level 5 just sits there. Nobody's going to pick it up. Like nobody that actually mains gunlance is going to pick up a wide shelling level 5 unless they're doing it for the lulz, which doesn't make that much sense to me. But having said that, I think that we've gotten to a point that we talked about just about everything that we can in regards to being spoiler-free. Am I right there, Dark Hero? Is there something that you would like to add?
Nope. Let's get into the spoiler discussion. If you have yet to play through the Iceborne expansion, if you are trying to keep yourself away from any sort of spoilers, to go in blind, not even watching many of the trailers that were revealed by Capcom, then move away. Now we're going to discuss all of that at length, so you have been warned.
Pretty much. In case you guys are just wondering, our overall opinion of the expansion, completely positive. We still love it, yes. And that is the reason why we criticize it as much as we do when it comes to these weapon designs and all of these things. Because here's the thing. A lot of times people just come out and they say, oh, everybody's so negative about video games and all this stuff. No, it's like we criticize it because we like the game so much. If we didn't like the game, we'd be like, whatever, fuck the weapon designs. I don't care. I never liked the game anyway. Who gives a crap, right? This way, it's because, no, we really love this. This is a fantastic fucking game. It's just like, why are you butchering some of these weapon designs? It doesn't make any sense. So, now, oh wow, I'm so drunk, dude. Look at this. I can't keep it together. Now that we've kind of like,
Wonderful.
We're done with the spoiler portion of the spoiler-free portion of the podcast. We're actually going to join the Ironbreaker session, which if you guys I believe it's probably still going to be the same that's in chat. So that if you guys want to like show up in the lobby or whatever, show off your characters and all of that stuff, you can do that. And it'll also allow us to go ahead and show you guys some of these weapons designs that we're talking about. But anyways, getting into spoilers, the very first thing that we got to talk about is, you remember how everybody said before Iceborne came out, people were like, a bunch of new monsters and a new map. Who gives a crap? Turns out those people were wrong about one very specific thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Go ahead.
Very specifically, they were wrong about that one map thing, because as it turns out, there's actually two of them. There's two new maps, and one of those maps is friggin' amazing, and it has the best combat music I've ever seen in Monster Hunter.
Oh, absolutely.
The combat music in the Guiding Lands.
My lord.
It's so good.
So freaking good.
So when you finish the game, when you beat the... Well, not really finish the game, but like when you beat the final boss, which is not finishing the game. When you beat the final boss of Monster Hunter World Iceborne, you are going to get a cutscene, and your character is going to go to this other location, which is called the Guiding Lands, because that is where you see one of the final monsters. that we haven't even fought yet. At least I haven't fought it yet, which is Ruiner Nergigante. You see him go off into the distance, and you go to this new map, which is called the Guiding Lands. And in the Guiding Lands, what they have done with this is they've created an experience that basically meshes 4 maps from Monster Hunter World. In this experience, you get Wildspire Waste, Ancient Forest, Coral Highlands, and Rotten Vale, all in one map. By the way, I'm hanging out at the sauna. Oh, let's actually toggle the armor. We're now at the sauna. We're changing locations. Is it that good of a music? Oh, yes, it is, Jay. Guiding Lands music is friggin' amazing. So, anyway, in this map, the way that things work from our current interpretation, because we're still learning a lot of the stuff, is that you get to level up the different portions of the map. So you get to level up the Ancient Forest, level up the Coral Highlands, the Rotten Vale, and Wildspire Wastes. And as you level up these different portions of the map, monsters from those areas will start spawning randomly throughout the Guiding Lands. And the stronger that area is, the stronger the monster will show up. So, for instance, you start playing and you want to level up the Ancient Forest portion of the Guiding Lands. You're going to see stuff like Bombaru show up in there, Great Jagras, Anjanath as you start moving up a little bit, Puke. And then eventually as it levels up, you start getting like Rathalos, Rathian, the tougher monsters start showing up in there. Eventually you start getting tempered versions of those monsters. And all of these monsters are going to be dropping these different materials that you will need in order to get to the augmentation of your weapons, like to get your health regens, which I still don't have, to get to your attack increases in your weapons, to get to all of that stuff. You're going to need to level up your Guiding Lands as much as you possibly can. And that was a massive surprise. I'm so glad that particular part of the game was not spoiled for me, because you just get to the end of the game and they're just like, here's a whole new map with these whole new mechanics. Like, what did you think about that?
I was absolutely amazed by the Guiding Lands. It's a fantastic endgame mechanic. Not only are you able to level up the different regions in the Guiding Lands to have better monsters you can fight against, to then be able to further increase and augment your weapons and everything else, but it also, it's a different location altogether, and it was never advertised before, it was never revealed before, and it's a fantastic surprise that we didn't see coming.
It's just a fantastic way for you to then go on and kind of like farm some materials, upgrade your weapons, and it's kind of like a hunter's playground, because you don't really have to go back at the end of each hunt like you would do on a typical hunt in Monster Hunter, right? Typical hunt is you go to the hub, you eat, you pick up your quest, you go to the quest, you kill the monster, you go back, you do all that stuff. When you go into the Guiding Lands, it's more like, well, how many monsters do I want to kill? And you just kill as many monsters as you want. And eventually they give you a mechanic to lure out different monsters. So you'll be able to select, because at start, most of the monsters that show up in there are random. But the more you play in the Guiding Lands, the more stuff they start unlocking for you. And then you can start like, oh, now I want to fight a Zenogre, for instance. Oh, now I want to fight a Coral Puke. Whatever, and you get to start picking the monsters that you want to fight, and they're going to drop different materials, and that is the part that Dark Hero was saying, that you get to actually chase after the things that you want. So, for instance, in order to augment health regen, which I still don't know what the materials are, but you're going to need specific materials from specific monsters in the Guiding Lands, which means you go in there and you're like, no, I need to hunt this monster, as opposed to like, well, I'm going to go hunt the tempered monster and I'm going to pray to RNGesus that he gives me the relevant hero shining streamstone, whatever, right? Now you're actually going to be able to target it. The thing is, it's still going to take you quite a bit of time to figure out the materials that you need for the augmentation that you want. But once you know what those materials are, you'll be able to specifically target the things that you need and go after them, as opposed to having the whole RNG factor being put into question.
There's just a lot more you can do. It's not as monotonous, or it's not as reliant on RNG. And that is something that we criticized, and we finally got what we wanted. So it's a huge plus for the entire player base, especially for the hardcore players that want to be playing this game and only this game. It's a fantastic feature, And I think there's a possibility to see it being expanded upon with later updates, because it doesn't have an Elder's Recess area, for example, or a Hoarfrost Reach area, so maybe the developers could add that at some point, for example. But maybe that is going a bit too much into speculation. The point is that I think it's a fantastic addition to what is already an amazing expansion.
Very much so. So now that we're into spoiler territory, though, I have to ask you, what is your favorite monster in Iceborne?
I have been debating this for a very long time, and I'm still a bit unsure as to which monster is my favorite. So I'll let you go ahead first and describe yours while I'm still thinking about my own, or my two favorites, I guess.
So Hunter World Iceborne has actually introduced a monster that I like so much that it actually became my favorite of the entire series. It is my favorite monster of all time at this point in Monster Hunter. And that monster is the Seething Basil Goose. And I know that it's like, well, Basil Goose was introduced in Monster Hunter World. Well, yeah, I like Basil Goose a lot. I really do. But Seething Basil Goose just has this more aggressiveness to him, and the new types of explosive pods that he can actually put out. It's just, I don't know, there's something about him that I was just like, dude, I friggin' love it. I love Seething Basil Goose. He is my favorite monster of all time, hands down. Not only that, he is also my favorite armor of all time. Seething Basil Goose Alpha armor is just the best. Like, I don't care what you say. Seething Basil Goose armor is the best in the game. Flat out. No ifs, ands, or buts. Not available for discussion.
I definitely did love fighting against Seething Basil because I wasn't expecting a Basil Goose variant. I definitely wasn't. And what we got. If you didn't like Basil before, you're going to hate this guy even more.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
if you liked Basil before, you are going to love this guy. There's no in between when it comes to this. It's basically more aggressive, more explosions, more extra, as it's a fantastic monster, really. But I guess one of my favorite ones, I still don't have a particular favorite, but one of my favorite ones that not a lot of people seem to enjoy is the final boss of the expansion.
You had to go there, didn't you? God
Yes.
damn you.
So now that we are in the spoiler section, I guess we can talk about a bit about
Yep.
story. So while you are playing through the game, the story of Iceborne, you come to the realization that Volcana isn't the final boss. I mean, it was never really going to be the final boss, but there is a bigger monster, a bigger threat behind every event that has been happening throughout the region. And I just want to say before we get into the final boss that when you are going to the final boss and you are stopped by Ruiner Nergigante, the Nergigante variant that just looks more aggressive, more impressive than ever, it's a fantastic detail.
It is.
So what did you think about that detail?
I mean, I wasn't really expecting to see him there all of a sudden, but it's like Nergigante himself is always chasing after Elder Dragons. So when you do see him, you're like, well, what's he doing here? And then you start fighting him, and he's a little bit different than a regular Nergigante, but he kind of goes down a little bit faster than you expected, right?
Yeah.
He goes down a little bit faster than you were really expecting it to happen. And after that, you then get that cutscene. The cutscene, I think, is what got me the most, because I really like those types of cutscenes where your character's just like the most powerful thing ever. And it's like everybody's running away from danger, and your character just like turns around and he just starts walking towards the collapsing world around them, and he's just like, let's go. Here we go again. Just like complete badass. And that cutscene, I friggin' loved it, dude. It was amazing. So I liked Nergigante before the final boss, but what I really liked was that initial cutscene.
Yeah, it was an epic moment. And then after you beat Nergigante, you go and face the actual final boss. But he doesn't look very threatening. He has this look of a golem, a stone golem. He is covered in all kinds of stone, really. So you have to work your way around it. You have to basically destroy this armor of stone that he has covering himself. And as you do that, you start to see just how massive and powerful he is, because even in that form, he is able to cause massive earthquakes. So you start to understand you're dealing with definitely what isn't an average monster. It's a big deal what you're up against. And then once you get to the second phase of the fight and you remove that stone armor from the monster, you realize that you're fighting against this huge elder dragon that looks like an alien. It looks like a demonic creature was birthed into the world and is now trying to destroy everything. It's bringing calamity to the new world, and you are the only one that can stop it. The music goes through a crescendo. It's an epic moment. It even gets a bit too loud for my taste.
Oh yeah.
And it's an epic journey through that fight. And man, there's even a cutscene that happens at the end. But I want to know, what is your opinion on the final boss and the whole fight and everything?
I didn't like it. It fucking sucked. I'm exaggerating a little bit. Also, Ethan S., thank you very much for the souls. Tip of the hat to you, sir. Appreciate the support. But it's like this. Those fights are, to me, they are kind of like fights that in a lot of ways are designed around 4 players. And you can solo them for sure. I've soloed them. I soloed them with the gun lance the first time that we came across them. I fainted 3 times on my first attempt, and then like the second or third try I got him. But it's a fight that is going to have some really bad matchups. So you're going to have to swap your weapons. And I know it's like, you know, a part of being a good hunter is being able to adapt to any situation and change to different weapons and whatnot. It's just, when I had gotten to that boss, I was 100% focused on gun lances and I hadn't crafted anything else. So I had to like scramble and start thinking about other weapons and whatnot. I ended up defeating it with the gun lance, but it just wasn't a very fun fight for a normal shelling gun lance. You're basically sitting there trying to shell his toes. That's what you end up doing for most of the fight, because those are your options. I mean, every now and then you can wyverns fire him in the face, but other than that, you're pretty much just stuck full bursting his toes. And that is kind of the problem I had with it. After that, I made an insect glaive and I beat the crap out of him, but I thought the same way of Xeno'jiiva, because the first time that I fought Xeno'jiiva, I went in there with a sword and shield. And I was like, wow, yeah, sword and shield doesn't have a whole lot of reach now, does it? Xeno'jiiva moves all over the stage, kind of like this boss. At least this time around, the arena is a little bit smaller, so there aren't that many places for the boss to run away from you. But like Xeno'jiiva can just like cross the whole stage, and you're just like stuck running for like 30 minutes trying to get the Xeno'jiiva again. And so that's kind of like my main criticism of it. I think in terms of design, the monster looks phenomenal, especially when he opens up his crazy eyes, when he starts going with the crazy eyes. You look at his eyes, and when you start noticing that he's got like these human-looking teeth, you're just like, Jesus Christ, what the hell is this thing, right? And
it's a demon, straight up.
Yeah, he just looks very much like a demon. He looks very unique. A lot of people were pointing out that it looked like Volstrax's skeleton because of the fact that he can kind of like curve his wings forward, kind of like Volstrax can do. And he does like all those special attacks. Like his attacks, I think, are friggin' amazing. Like he's got a spirit bomb. He's got like a Kamehameha. He does all of these things with sonic power, and he'll mess you up. Like he'll mess you up real bad. And it's, again, from like the boss design and all of that stuff, it's an amazing looking fight. I just feel that there's going to be a lot of weapons that are going to be bad matchups for it. But what are you going to do about it? You know, I don't specifically hate him, but I'm not the biggest fan of going into that fight because right now I'm not maining weapons that are particularly good for him, which is why I just made insect glaive mode, go in there, aerial insect glaive, beat the crap out of it.
Yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from. And I also did have a hard time reaching the monster. I went into it with a hunting horn, which, you know, it's a very slow weapon. It doesn't have a lot of reach. So I also had some problems dealing with it. But when it comes to the scale of the fight and some of the interactions that you can have in that fight, the monster's moves and everything else, I think it's a monster that stands out among a roster of very unique, very powerful, and threatening monsters. And you mentioned the air pressure, the air currents, the Kamehameha attacks, the Spirit Bomb, all of that was amazing. And there's also some other part of the fight which I thought was very cool, is that you can use the Clutch Claw uh, to throw the monster against a wall, and there are some specific walls which will cause
Rocks
some
to fall
large
down.
rocks to fall on him, and it's so satisfying to pull that off. And man, the entire fight just the feelings you feel when you are playing through it is what got me the most, is what makes me love this monster so much, because I actually failed the first time around and I was so close to it. He was already in the final phase, pretty much about to die, and I ended up failing. But I wasn't demotivated. I was ready to jump back into it because, man, I just didn't see the Spirit Walk coming. I just didn't see it coming. I just see a huge thing that covers most of the arena. I just died, and I was happy for it.
It was so much. Was that the one that I was with you when that happened?
No.
No, okay, because that also happened when I went in there with you the first time. I remember that
Yeah,
I saw him
that
burrow
did
and go
happen.
away to do the Spirit Bomb, and I instantly went to the other side of the map. And then I looked to the middle of the map, and there you were. You're just like right in the middle. And I see the Spirit Bomb, and I was like, oh, that doesn't look good.
Yep, that is the card for sure.
It was cooler than Xeno. Yes, it was most definitely.
Absolutely.
I think it was better than Xeno. Xeno, I felt, was a lot more boring than him because Xeno just had. It was just mostly a chase fight. You're just constantly chasing after Xeno. He's not even that threatening. That guy at least had quite a lot of threatening moves. Now, so that's your favorite monster. What about? Is that also your favorite
Probably my
fight then?
favorite. Yeah, I would say maybe not my favorite monster. I still have yet to reach the conclusion.
Okay. Because, like, my favorite monster is definitely Seeding Basil Goose, but I think that my favorite fight was actually Namiel. I loved the...
Oh, really?
Yeah, I loved the way that they incorporated water with lightning in a monster that is themed around deep sea, because I know that a lot of people probably don't pay that much attention to the monster design in Monster Hunter World, but, I mean, in Monster Hunter in general, but usually everything has some form of a basis in reality. And I know that I'm saying that and people are like, what the fuck's he talking about? And it's like, no, just hear me out though. Like, for instance, Namiel. This is a monster that's got all of those crazy disco lights going and shit, right? That is actually a phenomenon that happens in deep sea creatures. Deep sea creatures, like I'm talking way deeper than you can even imagine. If you go do some research on Google, you'll find that these deep sea creatures, they have this weird bioluminescence to them, and that's kind of like where they were inspired to get those lights for Namiel, because it is a water monster, therefore a deep sea water monster. That's where they got the design of the lights. Another thing about deep sea creatures, that's where you get some of the electrical eels. Right? Electrical eels that discharge electricity. So that was one of the things that I didn't knew about Namiel. I knew that she was a water elder dragon. I did not knew that she had lightning. So you mix those two things in. For starters, you have a really cool interaction because, you know, you got a monster that can produce water. So he puts water, then he shoots lightning, electrifies the water. That's a really cool design. And on top of it, it makes sense from a monster design perspective because it's a monster that came from deep sea with bioluminescence and the lightning effects of electric eels, and I just thought that is a fantastically well-designed monster. Its armor set, most of its weapons look beautiful, with the exception of, naturally, the Charge Blade, which I can actually show you guys in case you guys are curious. But it was just like a fantastic fight all around, seeing all of those lightnings and waters and shit happening, which is why that is my favorite fight, even though it's not my favorite monster because Seeding Basil Goose just takes the cake. But in terms of a fight, I thought it was a really, really cool fight.
I did enjoy fighting Namiel a lot as well, and we already knew going into it that it was going to be a water-based Elder Dragon. That's what they advertised it as, that's what they announced it as, but the electricity part caught me off guard for sure, and as you said, combining the elements of having the water from a deep-sea creature and the thunder element as well, it was a perfect combination. And I just think that it turned out to be a fantastic addition to the game. One of the most unique Elder Dragons we have seen in the series by far. And the armor and the weapons as well, most of them look great with the exception of the Charge Blade, which you're seeing right now.
Yeah, the reason I pull up this Charge Blade is specifically so that we can start talking about the whole weapon design situation, because now we're going to be talking about specific monsters and stuff. And it's like, for instance, look at this, right? You look at this Charge Blade, and maybe if you don't know that much about Monster Hunter, you're like, looks fine. Not really a big problem. But most people that have seen really cool weapons in Monster Hunter, we look at this Charge Blade and we're like, this is a piece of trash. This is the most basic piece of trash that you could have made to symbolize this really cool looking monster. And this is one of the perfect examples, because I mean, just look at it. It's got a couple of elements from the monster, but most of it's just bone. It's just bone, 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 with a couple of tentacles on top of it. And now you're like, well, okay, what's a good looking weapon from this monster? And I'm going to show it to you. I haven't crafted it yet, but this weapon, for instance, the Switch Axe, is going to blow you guys away. And unfortunately, you can't see it in motion, but I've seen it in motion because one of the Ironbreakers used it in a hunt. This Switch Axe, see, this is what a fantastic weapon from Namiel looks like. It's beautiful. And if you see this thing in motion, I was so confused, I thought it was a longsword until he morphed it into axe mode. I was like, dude, that thing is amazing. So here's a really cool looking weapon design from Namiel. Compare it with that bone piece of garbage that is in the Charge Blade, and you begin to understand exactly where our frustration is coming from. Here's another example. Here's what the Namiel gun lance looks like, right? Bam, look at that. Beautiful looking gun lance, completely covered in moss materials. This is what Monster Hunter players want. They want unique designs that entirely reflect the monster. It doesn't have to make that much sense. It just has to look really cool. And you know, then you look at the Charge Blade and you're just like, I mean, come on, dude. So that's the whole thing about the weapon design. That's why people are so disappointed. You want to know another thing that I'm really disappointed in? Is you go over here to the armors, for instance, and you go to Zora Magdaros' armor, which, by the way, this is an armor that if you are playing Impact Files Charge Blade and you're trying to maximize the damage of your files, or if you are playing Gun Lance and you want to maximize the damage of your shells, it is not an option. You have to use 3 pieces of this armor, because this armor increases the damage that you deal with all of those attacks. And you look at it and you're like, wow, that's a cool looking armor, right? Yeah, it is. The problem is, if you then go to high rank, you go to, let me just get this, the Zora high rank armor. If I could, oh yeah, Zora was blue. I always forget that Zora is blue. It's all the way up here. If you go to the Zora high rank armor, right? See, the one that I'm wearing right now is the master rank version. I'm gonna swap it to the high rank version. Watch. Can you see the difference? Because I can't. It's exactly the same armor. This is a problem.
Disappointing.
This is a very big problem because, and you guys will be like, well, I mean, come on, it's the same armor. Does it really have to change that much? Well, I'll give you another example. No, I'll just straight up give you another example. Look at Teostra's armor. This is the high rank version of Teostra's armor, right? It looks like this. Then you go to the master rank version of Teostra's armor, and it looks 10 times cooler. This is the beta version, so we're going to swap it also with the beta version. Let me just see, where is Teostra? I got so many monsters up in here. Bam. Completely, I mean, it remains the same aesthetics, but it changes so much. It's even got a cloak. Like, it changed so much. And then you look at Zora's and it changed nothing. And it's an armor that a lot of players are going to be forced to using. They're not going to have a choice. You have to use it if you want a min-max. It's not even a choice. And that is a bit of a problem, I feel, with that specific armor set. And that's, you know, but again, the thing is, you see the highs and the lows, because there are so many things that improve drastically. Like this Teostra armor, to me, was a massive improvement. I never really liked the look of the original Teostra armor, but in Iceborne, I think it looks fucking amazing. I'd love to rock this armor, because it just looks so good. And it's kind of like, you know, you get this situation repeated throughout quite a few armor sets, quite a few weapons. I mean, if you guys are curious about the drumsticks that I was talking about earlier, like...
the beautiful, beautiful, glorious Brachydios dual blades.
There's a,
Doesn't get much better than that.
and they used to be so good looking too. That's the big problem, right? Like, look at that. Doesn't that look like a fucking KFC drumstick right there? It's like some fried chicken. Instead of getting the KFC wrapper, you got the Brachiodeos wrapper. There you go.
Such a big disappointment when it comes to this. This is the only fault of the expansion, aside from the big problem with the gun lens.
Yeah, the white shelling
shelling.
level 6. Yeah.
These are the only problems that we have seen so far with the expansion, which speaks volumes for how amazing it is.
It is, most definitely. I just wanted to showcase the shortcomings of the design here. You also now have a full room that you can customize. The new gathering hub is like one of the coolest things ever. I mean, just look at this gathering hub. I think this is the best gathering hub we've ever had. Am I right?
By far, and it also has a seamless transition to the smithy.
Yeah, you can just...
We've all wanted to access all of the research facilities, all of the NPCs from here. You can take care of everything here. You can go to the Botanical Research Center, you can take care of your bounties, you can go to your house from here, go to the smithy. You can
that's right. There's a connection directly to your room as well. I should showcase the room for the people that haven't seen it yet. And here in the footbath, there's also this little detail that you can basically pick up your palico. Like, it's so cool. You can pick up your palico, dip his toes in the water. It's the little details that the Monster Hunter team is able to pull off that just really make it a really cool experience. No, it's even though the focus of this game is for you to hunt and kill monsters, they managed to put on all of these little things that you can do while you're waiting for your friends to get for a hunt, while you're waiting for people to prepare. Just basically a lot of really neat features to mess around in. I just find it really, really cool. Like, look, there's Dark Hero messing with his palico as well. The armors that you can put on the palicos are pretty cool.
Oh yeah, some of them are just incredible. And again, some of the new weapon designs are
Exactly.
not to go back to the discussion about some of them looking terrible.
Some of them are incredible, yeah.
Yeah, like the final boss's weapons and armor set. It makes you look like a god. There isn't much else I can say about it.
Yeah, like you see Dark Hero's palico right there is rocking the final boss's armor set, and he's basically sitting in the lotus position. I mean, look at that. Like an enlightened palico. You're gonna put him in there, he's gonna float in that thing like a boat.
It's amazing.
It is pretty friggin' cool. But yeah, you got...
like Rurikhan was saying, we have the new player room, which is more like an entire house. It has 2 floors. It has a sauna area. It has a lot of stuff that you can customize much more than you could ever before. You can change paintings on the wall. You can change accessories such as couches, the food that is on the table as well. There's so much stuff you can do there. You can add different pets and everything. You're playing The Sims in this game, okay?
And one of the things that I always found interesting is that, you know how whenever in a video game the subject of player housing is brought up, usually you have to grind until your friggin' eyes fall down from all the exhaustion of all the grinding that you've done to collect some imaginary currency to be able to buy a proper house. In this game, they're just like, no, here you go. Here's your room. This is what the room looks like, in case you guys are wondering. You can customize it to the nth degree. This is just like my iteration of it, which got stone walls and a stone floor, and it's got these tables and stuff. But you customize pretty much everything that you are seeing here, like this flag. You can change that. This portrait of the handler, you can change that. This little shelf here, you can change that. This Zora Magdros portrait, you can change that too. Your weapon that you currently have equipped shows up in here. You have this little thing. You got some cold water over here. And you get this little tower thing that you can kind of sit down on, which is pretty cool. You can just admire the scenery. Or you also have your own personal little hot spring that you can do the same stuff that we were doing in the gathering hub. Like, you can take off your armor, and you can do the... I mean, I'm trying to. You can do the whole thing where your character just kind of floats around. You have this really chill music. It's just... such a cool, like, complete experience, right? it's not just about the hunts, even though that is most definitely the focus, and you're going to be doing a lot of that. There's also a lot of relaxing things that you can do if you just feel like, oh man, I've grinded for so long, let me just like take a breather. And a feature that I can't wait for is when you can actually call your friends to come over to your room as well.
Yes.
Because you will be able to do that and see what everyone's room looks like, explore it, hang out. It's just a really good time.
Throw parties, it's going to be a fun time, no doubt. And something that you did mention is that just how pro-consumer Capcom is, because a lot of games make you pay for this kind of stuff. Maybe you can have a player house, but it's a tiny square with only a chair and a bed. If you want to get more, pay up. In this case, you have access to everything for free. You can go on quests to unlock different decorations. You can grind different aspects of the game, such as the Steamworks to get some other decorations, complete deliveries to get more decorations. It's a fantastic feature. As Rurikhan was saying, it's not all about the hunts. The silly and whimsical aspect of the game, of the series as a whole, is something that the players have always appreciated and is present in Iceborne more so than ever.
Look at another really good designed weapon. I love this weapon the first time that I saw it.
Yeah.
It's the Velkhana hunting horn. I think it looks friggin' amazing. And also, I don't know what layered armor she's using, but that also looks really good. I want to get that. It's probably going to look different on male characters, but yeah.
For male characters, it's the commander.
Oh, okay. Then I already have that.
I think at least.
We have the macaques in here just hanging out, all these different symbols. It's just...
And they react to you, which is adorable.
Yeah, it's just a really, really, like, complete experience. Just, like, top to bottom. And in terms of monsters, like, we've talked about a lot of the monsters. Some of them new, some of them returning. The returning ones look better than ever as far as I'm concerned. Like, Brachydio's coming back. Glavenus coming back. I friggin' love it. Tigrex, I fucking hate his ass. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, man. It's just overall, right? It's been a fantastic journey, and we haven't even seen everything. Let's put it like that. There's still more master ranks that we need to get to some of the other monsters. There's still more conditions that we gotta do in the Guiding Lands to unlock some of the secret monsters that I still don't know how to do. But there's definitely content here that's gonna keep you grinding for hundreds of hours. I think they knock it out of the park pretty much on almost every aspect, save for a couple of weapon designs. And it's just a fantastic expansion. That's just my overall opinion on it.
Yeah, just, we couldn't recommend this enough. As far as the expansions go, I wouldn't even consider this an expansion. I would rate it as a game on its own, because it has this much content, it brings this much enjoyment and fulfillment when you're playing through the game. And, I mean... Can we all agree that Monster Hunter World is the best game out there?
I mean, for me...
We're even going to get more content after this.
For me, that was the case in 2018. Like, I tied it with Dark Souls in 2018, because Dark Souls has been my favorite game of all times for a long time. And in 2018, Monster Hunter World tied it up, and then eventually as they released more content, and I just saw myself completely hooked and coming back to it always, repeatedly, I was like, no, I guess I like this more. And now Iceborne's come out, brings all these new monsters out, all of these new systems out, and it's definitely became my favorite game of all time. I'm a complete fanboy of Monster Hunter at this point.
Definitely. And one thing that we didn't touch on is the story. We didn't go too in depth on it. What are your thoughts on it?
So in terms of the story, one of the things that I liked is the fact that you get much more moments in cinematics where your hunter just kind of like goes off and does his thing regardless of what people say. Like early on when they are arriving at Hoarfrost Reach and the Third Fleet commander, she's like, okay, we got to go back. We're canceling everything. We're going back. We need something else before we can come back here. And your hunter just goes like, nope. Hooks onto a wing drake. Here I go. See ya. And then the handler does the same thing, follows you, and you just like kind of go off. Kind of the same feeling that you get when you are at that final cutscene before Shari Shvalda. where just like everybody's running away. They're like, we gotta come back. This is too dangerous. This is crazy. And then your character just turns his back and he's like, I'm going like that way where the things are happening. That's the direction I'm going in. So that was cool. But I was still confused because, so here's the thing. Velkhana, in my opinion, looks a lot like Kulf Taroth. I'm not sure what the relationship is there, but there is the thing where the commander tells you at the start of the Kulf Taroth encounter, he goes like, reminds me of that time, right? He always says that. And you're left wondering like, so what's the relationship between Velkhana and Kulf Taroth? And then on top of it, I felt like the story doesn't really explain what Velkhana is doing in the middle of all that, because Velkhana isn't really the one who's causing the song and the migration of the like Yanas. That was not Velkhana. That was Shara Ishvalda, who is fucking with the balance of the Everstream, right? She was following the Everstream or whatever. And
so why was she going to the ancient forest?
Exactly.
Those are some unanswered questions.
I completely agree. But overall, I liked the story. I thought it was fun. I liked when you see the final boss like reveal and all that stuff. Despite like it's not my favorite fight, but I still like when he starts cracking up and bringing everything out of the rocks and stuff, and you start understanding the magnitude of this elder dragon that you're facing up against. And I thought that was really cool. So overall, I did like the story. It's still not one of those stories that is really going to mark you the same way that, you know, other stories in video games will mark me. But it's still a decent story for a Monster Hunter game.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the second best story the series has ever had. Second to For Ultimate, in my opinion.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, dude, I bet the first one is For Ultimate. For Ultimate is just so cool because you get to visit all of those different villages, isn't it? There's just something about going through the world of Monster Hunter on an airship. There's just something about that.
But you develop this sort of relationship or rivalry with Gormagala that you keep running into him.
Yep.
And but that's a story for another time. But I would also add that the ending of the Iceborne expansion, the story part of the Iceborne expansion, I guess, the ending where after you defeat Sharish Valda, all of the meaningful NPCs, they get together with you, they congratulate you on the win, and then it seems that Sharish Valda is still alive. You have that brief moment where Sharish Valda opens the eyes and, you know, it's a rush of adrenaline. Oh my god, is there going to be a new phase of the fight? What's going to happen here? Everyone gets ready to fight Sharish Valda, and then the Ruiner Nergigante that you had just defeated comes out of nowhere, kills Sharish Valda, eats a portion of Sharish Valda, and then takes it away to presumably a place where it's going to eat the entire body of that monster, and then we never hear of Ruiner Nergigante again because I assume we're going to fight him later on in the game. We have yet to reach that point, and I would assume he's going to acquire some powerful attributes of Sharish Valda, so I cannot wait for that. That was a perfect tease in my opinion.
It was a lot of fun because they then also talk about how Nergigante is at the end of the day like nature's solution to the balance of the world. It's like because nature starts to realize, like, let's call it Gaia, right? Because there are references of Gaia across Monster Hunter. So Gaia begins to kind of like realize that like, oh, all these elder dragons are a problem. What does it do? It produces another elder dragon that eats elder dragons, which is Nergigante. Nergigante, at the end of the day, is the actual hero of the story of Monster Hunter World. He's the one keeping the balance by murdering the elder dragons. We're the ones who are fucking up the balance at this point by messing up with Nergigante.
Pretty much. We're just killing him for no reason.
Father Grimm says that Velkhana was trying to protect her homeland from being destroyed by Sharish Valda.
How?
Yeah, I don't know. Because, like, if you're protecting your homeland, why would you go to the ancient forest? That doesn't make that much sense to me either, but...
Why would you take a detour?
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
I don't know, but it's... Again, we don't really look for good stories in Monster Hunter.
Yeah.
But even then, I would say that this is more than an average story.
Yeah, it's decent. It's pretty decent. I enjoyed it. I particularly like a lot of the cutscenes in this one more than the previous ones because you do see the development of the characters. Like, there is a bit of a changing of the guard story in this game with the first
Matthew Mercer.
the first fleet commander and the who's the other, the field team commander, right? That's his name.
Yeah.
And they kind of like, he's like, no, now you're the leader, now you have to do things. So there's a changing of the guard there, and it was cool to see the new character rise up to the position of leader, particularly during the defense of Seliana. That I thought was really cool. Although I gotta
think of the siege.
I gotta be honest though, I wish, and I know this is gonna sound really sadistic, I wish the master had died. It would have added so much more meaning to the whole thing, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Him sacrificing himself to save the field team commander. It always
at
feels.
the end of the day, that scene where he is hurt and then the new leader is worried about him.
Yeah.
It doesn't have much meaning to it because nothing really happened.
Yeah, everything just kind of goes back to normal. It always seems that Capcom and Monster Hunter has these opportunities to actually kill off some of the characters and really take the story to the next level. But for some reason they don't do it. I never understood why.
Yeah, nobody dies.
It's like for instance, same thing in Xenojiva. Like the insect glaive guy could have died. He got shot in the chest by friggin' Xenojiva. He could have died. Or maybe
he didn't do much.
I think would have been even better was the Admiral dying to hold back Xenojiva while you get away and then you come back to get revenge. That would have been amazing too.
Badass.
Although my dream scenario was always to see the handler pull out a heavy bowgun and start wyverns firing Xenojiva in rage. Dude, that would have been so... Like, imagine, for instance, when Xenojiva does the first blast, you would see a cutscene where, like, a piece of rock would fall on top of, like, the oven where she makes the food. And she's like, the food!
She's fucking pissed.
The food! And so she would just pick up a heavy bowgun, run over to Xenojiva. Ah! Like, that would be amazing, dude.
That would be hilarious.
That'd be so cool. So I put us here in the smithy. In case you guys are curious about how the new augmentation system works, if you haven't seen it, if you haven't gotten to endgame and you're curious about it. And I don't know how many extra slots weapons can have, because it says extra slots 1. So I'm not sure if you'll be able to have like an extra slots 2. I don't know what the deal is, but each weapon begins with a certain number of slots. Right now, my weapon has 5 slots, right? Once I add extra slots, it will be able to have a combined total of 7 slots. And then each augmentation is going to take a different number of slots to apply. So extra attack is going to take 3 slots, extra affinity is going to take 2 slots, defense 1 slot, you guys get the gist. Health regen, which is probably what most people care about, takes 3 slots. Most weapons are able to do at least health regen, right? And then you do the combinations that you want. So if I am able to get these 7 slots, you guys will be able to get, for instance, attack up, health regen, and still get defense increase or element status effect up. It's completely up to you. And then on top of that, there is the custom upgrade system. Now, not every weapon has a custom upgrade. Only weapons of rarity 10, I believe, can do the custom upgrade system, because the other weapons, they have a unique look to them. So like, for instance, the Zenogre gun lance, I can't do custom upgrades on it because it already has its own defined model. On the other hand, my Brachydios Buster, which currently looks like a Legiana gun lance, you can go into the custom upgrades. And right now I'm in upgrade level 4, and this goes all the way up to level 5. Kagran has actually tested it. He was able to take it all the way up to level 5. And each of the following upgrades is going to give your weapon a little change. So for instance, if I was to go Glavenus at this stage, I would get 10 defense. If I go Fulgor, I'm going to get plus 10 blast. If I go Acidic, I get plus 2 attack. And if I go Yangaruga, I would get 1% affinity. And you're able to do 5 upgrades just like this. So if you want, you can do like 20 additional element and 3% more affinity, or 50 additional element, which is what I am going for in this particular gun lance. And every time that you apply the custom upgrade, it changes the look of your gun lance. So in my case, for instance, the next upgrade level is going to make it look like a Fulgor Anjanath gun lance, which to me doesn't make any goddamn sense. It's a Brachydios Buster. I don't understand why the system works. Like, I can make it look like a Glavenus gun lance if I want to. I'm not sure why I would want that other than the bonuses, but It's weird. I just think it's just weird the way the custom upgrade system works.
I don't like it one bit. To be honest, I didn't even notice it at first. But then upon inspecting it and starting to understand how it really works, I just think it has no place in Monster Hunter. You know, it's not the same as transmog, as weapon transmog, which is a whole other ordeal, which we're not getting into that. But why would you want to change the aspect of your weapon to then upgrade a small portion of it? It doesn't make any sense.
It's like upgrading the small portion of it as a min-maxer I get, which is what I'm doing.
Yeah, that part is cool, but
it just feels to me like they're stretching this thing over a long period of upgrades, which actually use a lot of materials that we get from the guiding lands.
a lot of them.
And it's like, to me, it's just not satisfying to now have a gun lance that is the Brocky gun lance that already doesn't look that great as the Brocky design, by the way. The Brocky design does not look that great, and Brocky is the gun lance that I was referencing earlier that I crafted all the way back in Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, and I loved it. I love the design of Brocky in Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate and Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. It looks amazing. The Brachydios weapon, the gun lance, looks amazing. Yep. And then you come here and your Brachydios gun lance looks terrible, and then to top it off, it's like I'm looking at all the stats and I'm thinking, well, what would I want to upgrade on this particular gun lance? I want to upgrade the blast, make it blast more often, because I mean, I can upgrade the attack. Most of the damage is coming from shelling. Doesn't make that much difference. I can upgrade the affinity, but again, most of the damage is coming from shelling. Shelling doesn't crit, doesn't make any difference. So what am I going to do? I'm going to upgrade the blast element naturally, and I don't even have a choice. I have to pick up all of these. So the next one, it's going to look like a Fulgur Anjanath, and I'm just like, why? I don't understand the point of it. It's really weird. Like, I love the new augment system. That's amazing. The fact that you're kind of like playing around with slots and you can mix and match, because different rarity weapons are going to have different levels. So the Brachydios Buster, which is a rarity 10, is going to start with five augment slots. If you go to rarity 12 weapon, you're going to have 3 slots. So you have to really pick them a little bit more. To compensate, naturally, the weapon's going to have either more element damage, more sharpness, or more damage all around. But, you know, there's a balancing act there, which is cool, which we already had in the form that you could have like 2 augments in lower rarity weapons as opposed to 1. And if it was even lower rarity, you could go all the way up to 3 augments. So that's kind of how they're balancing it with these slots, and I think it works great. But then just the custom system is the part that I don't get. I'm just like, I don't understand the need for it.
It makes no sense to me. Maybe if there were special pendants that you could add to the weapon that would increase an attribute, maybe. But I don't know. Maybe they are using this as a band-aid fix to the bad weapon designs, but then again, you're replacing a bad weapon design for possibly a worse weapon design. So
yeah. And Chris C, I know that blast is not going to affect the shelling. That's not what I was implying. I'm just saying, between additional damage or affinity that don't actually change shelling, I'd rather do blast, which also doesn't change shelling, but you get more blast procs, which deals 300 damage per proc, which is pretty damn sweet. Blast is actually really powerful at this point in the game. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about Monster Hunter World at this point. I love it. This is almost like a review at this point. It's a podcast review type of crazy thing. I can't wait to see some of the monsters that I haven't seen yet, which means I got to get back to grinding. Do you have anything else that you want to add?
No, I think we said pretty much everything we needed to talk about. Just a fantastic expansion that is going to keep us playing the game for hundreds, if not thousands of hours. And I am addicted.
So guys, if you guys enjoyed this podcast, remember, hit that like button because it helps me out a lot. Always remember this, like, just imagine for a split second how much you actually think it would help me if you hit the like button. Multiply that by 9,000. That's how much it actually helps me. And also, make sure to subscribe to Dark Hero's channel, which for some reason I had the link here. Here we go. It's actually in the description if you're watching this in the VOD. But
there we go.
Make sure to... Why is that? Oh, for a second it wasn't showing up as a link. There we go. But you guys can just click there. Make sure to subscribe to him as well. Thank you all very much for hanging out and being fantastic audience here. And tomorrow I will be back with more Monster Hunter World gameplay. But for today, that is going to be it. Today, I'm actually going to get to go home at a decent hour. That's fantastic. Dark Hero, thank you very much for showing up for the podcast.
Of course, dude. Thank you for inviting me.
It was amazing. If you guys enjoyed these, we might do more in the future depending on Dark Hero's schedule, because Dark Hero's he's still a young buck. He's still studying in college and shit. He's not an old man like me quite yet, but he'll get there. He'll get there in time.
In time. Someday.
Stay strong, and may your shields never break.